Okay, so here we have a quick presentation on Chapter 12, Is That a Symbol? In this chapter, Foster starts off with explaining the difference between symbolism and allegory. The focus of the introduction to this chapter is that symbolism does not have one set explanation per symbol. A symbol is never going to stand for one thing and one thing only. So symbolism is a range of possible meanings and interpretations. Allegory, on the other hand, is where things stand for other things on a one-to-one basis. Okay, so there is a difference between symbolism and allegory. The reason why symbolism is so complicated and that there's never just one answer to what is this a symbol for is because of this wonderful quote found on page 103. Every reader's experience of every work is unique, largely because each person will emphasize various elements to differing degrees, and those differences will cause certain features of the text to become more or less pronounced. We bring an individual history to our reading, a mix of previous readings to be sure, but also a history that includes, but is not limited to, educational attainment, gender, race, class, faith, social involvement, and philosophical inclination. These factors will inevitably influence what we understand in our reading, and nowhere is this individuality clearer than in the matter of symbolism. The reason why symbols mean different things is because people interpret them in different ways. Everybody is different. Everybody has a different set of experiences. Everybody's read different stuff, been taught different things, has a different religious background, has a different educational background, a different cultural background. So the way that we look at specific things could be different depending on, the eyes that we see them through. To complicate things even further, we have the same issue with our authors. The problem of symbolic meaning is further compounded when we look at a number of writers emphasizing various distinct elements for a given symbol. Just like everybody is unique, authors are the same way. Authors don't want to bring the same thing to the table. So given the story that they're telling, one symbol can mean one thing with Mark Twain, for example, and mean something completely different when you're looking at it in a Steinbeck novel. So basically, what this chapter boils down to is a symbol's meaning might be different for everyone, and that's okay. There is no one set meaning. Stop going to Spark Notes and making sure that your interpretation is correct. Don't be scared of having the wrong interpretation. If you can argue your interpretation with textual support, it's pretty much valid. Granted, you want to take into account, the historical context, the author's biographical context, and as much information as you can to make sure that your interpretation is correct. But don't let anybody ever tell you, like, oh no, the symbolism of this is this. Because in a novel, there are usually so many things at play that you can kind of go in a different direction if you start to see a pattern that somebody else might be missing. Okay, so here are some quick characteristics of symbols that Foster wants you to remember. So symbols might have a common meaning, but don't assume that because one symbol was one thing in one instance, it's going to have that same meaning in all texts. Instead, you should kind of keep common meanings in mind, but stay open-minded about other possibilities. Symbols aren't always objects. Actions can be just as symbolic as objects, and we'll see that a little bit more when we talk about the violence chapter as well as those awkward sex chapters. So one example of symbolic action comes from the poem The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost, where you have a man, he has to choose a path in the woods, and the poem is symbolic of one choosing one's direction in life. So it's not just the path that's a symbol, it's actually the actual selection of it, the thinking about it, the deliberation is also symbolic as well. Okay, symbols also can change or evolve in a text, so as you annotate, which you should, the situation in which the symbol appears, the impact of the symbol on the situation, the tone and mood of that particular instance, all of those things can change what the symbol means. So make sure that when you're annotating, you're not just like highlighting the symbol. Make a note. What do you think in this instance it's doing? And again, you might not start to see that evolution until a little bit later in the text, but the sooner you can start making a guess, the better. And so there you have it. That's a quick summary of Chapter 12.